The scorching Nevada summer sun seemed to seep right into my bones as I loaded the last boxes into my Ford F-150. At 32, I, Jordan, finally managed to snag a break from endless hours working as a mining excavator operator. 6 weeks forced off because of equipment maintenance. Any other guy might have dreamed of Vegas or even a trip to the coast, but my destination had been the same every summer since I was a teenager: Aunt Susan's house in Carson City. If you've ever found yourself stuck in a situation that looked simple until you realized it was completely out of control, hit that like button now. Aunt Susan's red brick house still smelled the same, a mix of homemade bread and that floral perfume she insisted on spraying everywhere. My temporary room was in the basement, a space shared with a ton of boxes full of family memories and old sports gear. Down the hall, Tyler's room, my cousin, was exactly as it had been on my last visit. My routine soon fell into place. I'd get up early, help Aunt Susan with breakfast, and spend my mornings exploring the trails around the property. Afternoons usually meant small fixes around the house. Aunt Susan always had an endless list of broken things she claimed only a man could fix. But the evenings were when I really felt alive. Tyler and his friends would gather in the backyard around the bonfire, drinking beer and telling stories. It was on the Friday of the first week that everything changed. Tyler had invited his friends, Josh, Kevin, and Scott, for a night of drinks and games. The heat of the day had given way to a pleasant evening that perfectly matched the bonfire's glow. "Let's play Truth or Dare," suggested Josh, already on his third beer with a mischievous grin. Tyler, 28, with his golden hair and that magnetic confidence of the all-time popular guy, just shrugged. He never turned down a dare. The night rolled on with silly questions and ridiculous dares until Josh pointed at me. "Jordan, truth or dare?" "Dare," I replied, trying to sound confident. Josh smirked mischievously. "I dare you to kiss someone here." A heavy silence fell over the group. My heart started racing. Without a second thought, or maybe I'd been thinking about it for years, I got up, walked over to Tyler, and before I could lose my nerve, pressed my lips to his. The next few days were weird. Tyler never brought up the kiss, but something had changed. We started spending more time together, fixing up the old fishing boat that belonged to our grandpa. Our hands would occasionally brush against each other as we worked side by side, and neither of us pulled back. "You've always had a way with your hands," Tyler remarked while I adjusted the engine. His gaze lingered on my fingers a bit too long. In the mornings, we began running together on the trails. Tyler showed me his secret spot, a little lake hidden among the pines where we'd swim when the heat got too much. Watching him dive in, with water streaming off his torso as he emerged, stirred up feelings in me that I tried and failed to ignore. At night, when everyone else was asleep, we'd meet on the back porch. We'd talk about everything and nothing. His plans to open a mechanic shop, my stories from the mines, shared childhood memories. We never mentioned the kiss, but it lingered between us like an unkept promise. In the third week, I noticed Tyler becoming more distant. His friends started showing up more often, especially Josh, who kept throwing ambiguous comments about that night. "Why did you kiss me?" Tyler finally asked one night when we were alone in the backyard. The full moon lit up his tense face. "It was just a dare," I lied, avoiding his gaze. "So, it didn't mean anything?" His voice carried an emotion I couldn't quite figure out. Before I could answer, Josh appeared on the porch with a few girls. He draped an arm around Tyler's shoulders and pulled him away. For days afterward, Tyler avoided being alone with me. Whenever we passed each other in the kitchen or down the hall, the tension was palpable. One night, I overheard Tyler arguing with Josh. "It's not that simple, man," Tyler sounded frustrated. "It's exactly as simple as you want it to be," Josh shot back. "Unless you're really into him?" The silence that followed felt like a ton of bricks dropped on me. After that talk between Tyler and Josh, I spent days trying to convince myself it'd be better to forget it all and just focus on the time I had left in Carson City. But fate had other plans for that Saturday night. Aunt Susan had gone away for the weekend with her friends, leaving the whole house to us. Tyler invited a few friends over, but as the night went on, they left one by one until it was just the two of us. The room was filled with silence, while Tyler flipped through TV channels without really watching anything. "Want a beer?" I offered, trying to break the tension. Tyler just nodded, not taking his eyes off the screen. I came back from the kitchen with 2 cold bottles and sat next to him on the couch, keeping a distance that felt both safe and unbearable. "Jordan," Tyler finally said, turning to me with an intensity in his eyes that made my throat tighten. "That kiss, I can't stop thinking about it." My heart was racing so much I was sure he could hear it. Me neither, I admitted softly. Tyler set his beer on the coffee table and moved closer. His eyes roamed my face as if he was seeing me for the first time. His fingers brushed lightly against my cheek, almost as if he were savoring the touch. "I've never felt this way about another guy," he murmured. "I don't know what to do with these feelings." "We don't have to do anything," I replied, trying to ignore the heat spreading through me. "We can just let it happen." Tyler's hand slid to the back of my neck, his fingers tangling in my hair. I could feel his quickened breathing on my face as we moved closer. This time, when our lips met, there was no audience, no dare, just all the pent-up desire finally coming free. What began as a hesitant kiss soon turned into something more intense. His lips were softer than I imagined, in contrast to the rough stubble that grazed my face. My hands found their way to his shoulders, feeling the tense muscles under his thin t-shirt. Tyler pulled back a little, his eyes searching mine. "I want to show you something," he said, taking my hand and leading me upstairs to his room. Tyler's room was lit only by the bluish glow of moonlight streaming through the window. He closed the door behind us, and suddenly the outside world disappeared. It was just the two of us in that familiar space, but it now felt completely new. Tyler moved closer again, his hands finding my waist with a confidence that contradicted his earlier hesitance. Our bodies moved together like magnets. The tension built up for weeks, maybe even years, creating an irresistible force. "I don't exactly know what to do," he admitted, his voice a bit hoarse as his hands slid under my shirt, exploring the skin on my back. "I don't either," I admitted, even though my body instinctively knew how to respond to his touch. "We can figure it out together." Our t-shirt soon hit the floor, and feeling his skin against mine sent shivers all over. His fingers traced every contour of my torso as if he were trying to memorize every detail. My mouth found his neck, tasting the saltiness of his skin, while his hands roamed further. We tumbled onto the bed, a tangled mess of limbs and heavy breaths. The mattress gave way under our weight as our bodies fitted together like pieces of a puzzle waiting a long time to be completed. With every touch, every kiss, our movements grew more urgent. His strong hands held my wrists above my head as he watched me, his eyes showing a mix of desire and vulnerability that I had never seen before. The moon lit up his chiseled torso, turning his skin into living marble under my fingers. "You're amazing," he whispered against my ear, his voice sending waves of heat through me. He led me in an intimate dance that our bodies already knew. His hard tool crept against mine, creating a friction that made me lose control of my voice. I bit my lip, trying to hold in the sounds that threatened to escape, but Tyler placed his thumb over my mouth. "I want to hear you," he said, eyes locked onto mine. I gave in to the moment, letting my body express the pleasure I felt. Tyler explored every inch of my skin with his mouth, moving down my chest, my stomach, until he reached the elastic of my briefs. He paused for a moment, his eyes begging for permission. I nodded slightly, and he continued his exploration. When his mouth finally found my throbbing tool, I had to hold onto the sheets to avoid completely losing myself. The sensation of his tongue exploring my shaft was like nothing else I'd ever experienced. Maybe because it was so forbidden. Maybe because of the long wait, or perhaps just because it was Tyler. Not wanting to only be on the receiving end, I flipped our positions, pressing him against the mattress while tracing the same path on his body that he had taken on mine. Every moan escaping his lips was like music, guiding me to where he wanted my touches, my tongue, my lips. When I finally took his hard tool into my mouth, I felt his hands tangle in my hair, guiding me in a rhythm that brought us both closer to the edge. The salty taste on my tongue was intoxicating, and the way his body responded to every move filled me with a power I had never imagined. "Jordan," he moaned, his voice tight with the effort to stay in control. "I want more. I want everything with you." Our exploration continued, each new discovery more intense than the last. Tyler opened the drawer on his bedside table and pulled out a small vial. "You sure about this?" I asked, wanting to make sure we weren't moving too fast. His eyes met mine, and I saw not only desire, but trust there. I've never been so sure of anything in my life. With patience and care, I prepped his virgin body for our final union. Every touch, every caress was a silent declaration of how much this moment meant. When I finally positioned myself to enter his most intimate sanctuary, I paused, taking in the sight of Tyler, confident, athletic Tyler, completely vulnerable beneath me. "Slow down," he pleaded, his eyes locked on mine. I began penetrating him with all the care in the world, watching every expression on his face and staying alert for any sign of discomfort. Being inside him was indescribable, warm, tight, and loaded with emotional meaning that went far beyond the physical. As his body adjusted to me, I started moving, setting a slow, deep rhythm that soon led us both into a state of shared bliss. Our breaths synchronized, our hearts beat as one, and suddenly, the outside world vanished. Jordan. He moaned my name like a prayer as we both reached the peak of pleasure together, our bodies trembling with the intensity of the moment. I collapsed beside him, our sweaty bodies still touching in places. Tyler turned to me, his eyes shining with a mix of satisfaction and wonder that made my heart skip a beat. That was... he began, seemingly at a loss for words. I know, I replied, pulling him close, feeling his heart beating against mine. For me too. I woke the next morning to the first rays of sunlight streaming through the curtains in Tyler's room. For a moment, I was disoriented until the memories of the previous night crashed over me like a wave of heat. I turned slowly, half expecting Tyler to have vanished, as if it had all been one crazy dream. But he was still there, watching me with those blue eyes that seemed even more intense in the morning light. A small smile tugged at his lips, though there was a hint of worry in his gaze. "Good morning," he said, still husky with sleep. "Morning," I replied, feeling a strange shyness that was a far cry from the intimacy of the night before. "You all right?" Tyler sighed, running his hand through his messy hair. "I'm still processing. It's a lot to take in." I nodded, totally getting where he was coming from. "Do you regret it?" He went silent for what felt like forever. "No," he finally said. "I don't regret it, but it complicates things." I sat on the bed, the sheet partially covering my naked self. "Listen, Tyler, about what happened last night. It was amazing," he finished, sitting down too, "but also scary. I've spent my whole life thinking I was just one thing, and now..." "You're still the same person," I assured him, fighting the urge to touch his face. "Nothing fundamentally changed." Tyler shook his head. "Everything has changed, Jordan. How I see myself, how I feel about the future. And what if the guys find out? And my mom? And if..." "Hey," I interrupted, finally giving in and placing my hand on his arm. "Let's take it one step at a time, okay? We don't have to fix everything right now." He nodded, but I could see his thoughts spinning behind those eyes. After a long, heavy silence, he suggested we grab breakfast. I agreed, and we both got dressed in silence, like we were trying to get back to normal. In the kitchen, while Tyler cooked eggs and I made coffee, there was a new tension between us. Not the sexual kind from the past few weeks, but something deeper, more complicated. Every so often, our eyes met, and a small smile would slip out before we quickly looked away, like a couple of teenagers caught in something we shouldn't be. "I don't know how to act now," Tyler admitted as he plated the eggs onto 2 dishes. "Hey, we don't need to label what happened," I said, serving coffee into 2 mugs. "We can just let it be." Tyler studied me for a long minute. "Have you been through this before? With other guys?" I hesitated, tempted to lie just to smooth things over, but I chose honesty. "Yeah, a few times." "So you're bisexual," I finished. Never felt the need to announce it to everyone, but it's not a secret either. Tyler slowly nodded, taking it all in. "And me? What does that mean for me?" "That's something only you can answer," I said softly. "And it doesn't have to be today." Sitting at that kitchen table, with sunlight making patterns on the tiled floor, we really talked. No excuses, no half-truths. Tyler opened up about parts of his life where he'd felt attractions he'd kept locked away, about the fear of disappointing his mom, his friends, himself. I shared my own journey of self-discovery, the struggles and joys of just being real. "How did you know?" he asked, fiddling with the edge of his mug. "That it wasn't just curiosity?" I smiled, recalling quieter moments. There wasn't a big aha moment. It was more about connecting the dots that were always there. And when I finally allowed myself to feel without judgment, everything made sense. Tyler nodded, thoughtfully. "I guess I always knew something was different about me. I just never let it take shape until you kissed me that night." As we wrapped up breakfast, I could sense something shifting between us. A mutual understanding, a deeper respect that went well beyond the physical. But I also noticed Tyler pulling away a bit, building an invisible wall as he tried to process everything about himself. Over the next few days, I watched Tyler swing between moments of intense closeness and stretches of distance. Some nights he'd come to my basement room, and we'd lose ourselves in each other until dawn. Other nights he'd be out with friends, coming home late and avoiding meeting my eyes at breakfast. A week after our first night together, I found Tyler sitting alone on the back porch, staring up at the star-spangled sky with an unreadable look on his face. "Mind if I join you?" I asked, hesitantly stepping onto the porch. He nodded, motioning for me to sit next to him on the swing. We sat in silence for several minutes, just watching the night sky glitter with stars. "I've been thinking a lot," Tyler finally said. "About us. About me. About everything." My heart tightened as I braced for what would come next. "And have you come to any conclusions?" Tyler turned to me, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. "I need some space, Jordan. I need to figure out who I am when you're not around." Even though I'd kind of expected it, the words still hurt. "I understand," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Really, I don't want you to think I regret it," he continued, his hand finding mine in the darkness. "What we had, what we have, is real. Maybe the most real I've ever felt, but it's new and scary, and I don't know how to fit it into the rest of my life." "You don't need all the answers right now," I said, gently squeezing his hand. "Some things just take time." Tyler managed a sad smile. "Time is exactly what I'm asking for." That night, lying alone in the basement, I thought about how drastically life can change in just a few weeks. I came to Carson City expecting the same old boring summer, and instead, I found something I never even knew I was looking for. Something that could fade away just as quickly as it had shown up. The last 2 weeks passed in a blur of tense moments and unspoken goodbyes. Tyler and I walked a careful line between being close and keeping our distance, never mentioning that conversation on the porch, but both aware that my departure was coming soon. The night before I left, Aunt Susan insisted on making a special farewell dinner. The air was thick with things left unsaid as we ate her famous roast, chatting about superficial stuff and carefully avoiding any talk about the future. "I'm going to miss you, dear," Aunt Susan said, serving dessert. "You always bring life to this old house." I smiled, feeling the weight of Tyler's gaze from across the table. "I'm really going to miss it here, more than you know." After dinner, Tyler invited me for one last walk. We strolled in silence to that little lake where we'd swum so many times that summer. The full moon paved a silvery path on the water, as if inviting us into another world. "I remember the first time I brought you here," Tyler said, picking up a stone and skipping it over the water. "We were what, 15 and 11? You taught me how to swim in this lake," I recalled with a smile. I was terrified. Tyler chuckled softly. "And now look at us." "Yeah, look at us," I thought. Two guys by a lake, carrying secrets and desires that were never part of the plan. "I need to tell you something," Tyler said, turning to me with a serious look. "I've decided to move to San Francisco." That news caught me off guard. "San Francisco? Since when?" "Ever since I realized I need to figure out who I am away from here," he replied. "Away from expectations, away from familiar eyes, a fresh start." "When?" "In 2 weeks," he said. "I landed a job at a garage there. It's not much, but it's a start." I nodded, feeling a confusing mix of emotions. Pride for his bravery, sadness for the distance, and a tinge of hope for what this change might mean for both of us. "I'm happy for you," I said genuinely. "It's a huge step." Tyler moved closer, reducing the distance until I could feel his warmth. "You were the catalyst, you know? You gave me the courage to finally face this part of me." "You've always had that courage inside," I replied. "I just opened the door." His hands met my face, his thumbs lightly tracing my cheekbones. "I have to do this journey on my own, Jordan. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not seeing you through the eyes of a cousin, a friend, a lover." I swallowed hard, knowing he was right but hating the ending. "I know. But that doesn't mean it's a forever goodbye," he continued, his eyes never leaving mine. "Think of it as a see you later." "See you later then," I whispered, leaning in until our lips met in a kiss filled with all the promises we couldn't voice out loud. That night, for the last time, we lost ourselves in each other. Every touch, every kiss, every sigh was loaded with extra meaning, a memory being etched in time, a goodbye whispered against the skin. And when we finally fell asleep, tangled together as if our bodies were unwilling to let go, I felt something settle inside me. Not an ending, but a postponed beginning. Subscribe to the channel and hit that like button to get more stories like this. The next morning, I loaded my bags into the truck under the rising sun in Carson City. Aunt Susan gave me a big hug, making me promise to come back next summer. Tyler trailed a few steps behind, his hands in his pockets and his face a carefully neutral mask. When we finally said goodbye, it was with a brief hug that lasted 1 second longer than what would be normal between cousins. Our hands touched briefly as we parted, and in that touch was everything we couldn't say out loud. "See you around," he said, with a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Count on it," I replied, trying to keep my voice light. "Good luck in San Francisco." And that was that. I got into my truck, waved one last time, and drove off, watching Tyler's figure shrink in the rearview mirror until it finally disappeared. On the highway back to Nevada, with endless miles of asphalt ahead, I let all the repressed emotions out. I wasn't just leaving Tyler behind. I was also leaving behind a part of myself, the Jordan that only existed when he was around, the Jordan who had discovered parts of him he never knew existed. 3 months passed since that summer in Carson City. I went back to the routine at the mines, back to long shifts under Nevada's scorching sun, but something deep inside me had changed. The memories of that summer stayed alive, surfacing in the most unexpected moments. Seeing 2 guys holding hands on the street, hearing a song that reminded me of that bonfire night, catching the scent of pine after the rain. Tyler and I kept in touch, cautiously at first. Short messages, occasional calls that carefully avoided any mention of what happened between us. But gradually, as he settled in San Francisco and started his own journey of self-discovery, our conversations opened up and became more honest. Just last week, I got a message from him. "I'm coming back to visit Mom for the holiday. Can we meet up?" 4 simple words that made my heart race like I was a teenager again. I replied with just 2. "Can't wait. I don't know what will happen when we meet again. I don't know if what we had was just a moment in time, a spark for our own journeys of self-discovery, or the beginning of something that's still unfolding. I don't know if Tyler found the answers he was looking for in San Francisco, or if he's still searching, just like me. What I do know is that that summer changed everything. It changed how I see myself, how I understand love and desire, and how I view the complexities of identity. That summer taught me that some connections go beyond labels, expectations, and even time and distance. If you've ever felt that inexplicable connection with someone, that sense of finding a part of yourself in another person, hit that like button. If you've ever had the courage to follow your heart, even when the road was scary and uncertain, share this story. And if you, like me, are still figuring out who you really are, know that you're not alone on this journey. Sometimes, we find our truth in the most unexpected places, maybe in a cousin's glance on a summer night, or in the courage it takes to finally accept who we really are. Until the next story, I'm Jordan, and this was my story. Subscribe to the channel and hit that like button to get more stories like this.